Before the camera existed, the Victorian elite commissioned paintings of the poor. Artists were paid to render poverty with a certain softness and a romantic distance that made suffering digestible enough to hang above a fireplace. When photography arrived, that distance collapsed. The camera could not romanticize the way a paintbrush could. It captured cracked skin, hollow eyes, and the particular exhaustion that only comes from having nothing. And rather than turning away, the wealthy leaned in. In this video, we're getting into how early photography turned real human suffering into a product for the privileged to consume from the comfort of their drawing rooms, and how the people being photographed had absolutely no say in any of it. Stay tuned and make sure you're subscribed, because this series is only going to go deeper. Destitution became a trend, dressed up as moral concern. Wealthy patrons and collectors began funding photographers to get into workhouses, slums, and orphanages, not out of any genuine drive to fix the condition they were documenting, but because the images sold. There was a market for what they called social photography, and that market was built on the idea that looking at poverty made you thoughtful, even virtuous. The suffering in the frame was real. The concern of the viewer, more often than not, was performance. The people being photographed had no legal claim to their own image. No consent was required, no credit was given, and certainly no share of the profit reached them. A child photographed in rags in the East End of London could become the centerpiece of a gallery exhibition or a widely circulated print, and the child would never know. The photographer owned the image, the patron owned the print, and the subject owned nothing, not even the right to say no. John Thompson was celebrated as a pioneer. His work moving through the streets of London in the 1870s was praised as courageous documentary. A man willing to go where polite society would not. But what his reputation glossed over was the framework he brought with him. Thompson did not photograph poverty as a crisis demanding a response. He photographed it as a landscape, something vast and gritty and foreign, something his middle and upper class audience could consume the way they consumed travel photography from distant colonies. The slums of London were rendered with the same exoticizing eye as the streets of Kenton. The people in them were treated with roughly the same regard. The candid photograph of this era was largely a fiction. Early cameras required subjects to hold still for several seconds, sometimes even longer, which made any genuine spontaneity impossible. What was sold as raw, unguarded truth was almost always directed. Photographers would instruct their subjects, people who were hungry, desperate, and in no position to refuse, to arrange themselves in poses that communicated maximum pathos. A mother told to look down, a child positioned in the doorway of a crumbling building, and a man arranged beside his tools to suggest noble destitution rather than systemic failure. The suffering was real, but the framing was entirely constructed. What began with individual photographers carrying an artistic or social mandate eventually hardened into an industry with its own economy. Publishers knew which images sold, exhibition drew crowds, prints were reproduced and distributed across Britain and beyond. The visual language of lower class suffering became standardized, a set of recognizable codes that signaled authenticity while delivering something carefully packaged for a paying audience. The people who appeared in these images remained poor. The people who produced and sold them did not. Asylums and prisons were among the first institutions to adopt photography at scale, and the reason had nothing to do with the well-being of the people inside them. The camera arrived in these places as a tool of control and classification. Patients in psychiatric wards were photographed without explanation, without agreement, and without any understanding of what would happen to their image afterwards. Prisoners were documented like inventory. The photograph was not taken for them, it was taken to serve the institution, the researcher, the administrator, and eventually the public. Dr. Hugh Diamond was the medical superintendent of the Surrey County Asylum in the 1850s, and he believed the camera could do what observation alone could not. He photographed his patients in what he described as diagnostic sessions, claiming the images captured the visible face of madness. He presented these photographs at medical societies and published them in journals, essentially turning the private suffering of women committed to his care into a public exhibition. His patients had no voice in this process. They were subjects in the most literal and humanizing sense of the word, bodies arranged to illustrate a theory and identities reduced to a symptom. What Diamond established and what the institutions that followed him built upon was a clinical gaze that treated the human being in the frame as a category rather than a person. The photograph flattened them. It removed context, history, and interior life and replaced all that with a label: hysterical, criminal, deviant, and feeble-minded. These images circulated through medical communities and eventually into broader cultural spaces, training generation of viewers to look at certain kinds of people as specimens rather than individuals. The camera did not invent that dehumanization, but rather it industrialized it. Thank you for watching. Until the next one.